My name is Siddesh, and I'm thrilled to have all of you here with me. Before we start on with the session, a quick show of hands. So, how many of you have any live production applications running right now? Almost everyone, right? And you're here at reInvent, enjoying the sessions, learning. How many of you know what you would do if the application goes down? Oh, fantastic. So you are clear on the step one, what you would do if the application goes down. How many of you have tested that workflow in last 90 days? Fantastic, great. So today I'm going to talk about a very important aspect of any business requirement, which is DR, which is business resiliency, right? And with me, we also have Zydus, a global pharmaceutical giant. We will walk through their journey of how they implemented disaster recovery for a very complicated and complex suite of applications using AWS disaster recovery system. But let me start with first talking to you about the agenda for today. So for the longest time, backup and disaster recovery was done using tapes. You have your data, copy that to the tapes, save the tapes at a secure location. Anyone does that now? I hope not. Okay, great. In today's time, we have multiple architectural patterns and solutions to give you much faster DR, that too at a much lower cost. Of course, backup and archival still exist, but you also have a active setup, which is much faster near real time, but that also comes at a cost. You also have multi-AZ deployments, which cloud offers you. Again, there is a different cost angle to that, right? So DRS gives you the benefit of a much more efficient disaster recovery at a lower cost, right? So you get the benefit of near in sub-seconds RPO and few minutes of RTO without taking the entire cost of active setup. So today we have Mr. Ravi, Chief Financial Officer for Zydus, who will talk to us about what their applications are, give us a brief overview of the company, and then I'll talk about how DRS helps you solve the DR problem, how do you set up and life cycle of disaster recovery using DRS solution. And finally, we have Ashish, our enterprise architect, who will give a short demo of how the service actually works and talk about how we architected the solution for Zydus, not only from the backup perspective, but how we architected the network, how did we achieve security and resiliency for their environment using AWS DRS. Well, with this, I would like to invite Mr. Ravi to talk about Zydus and give us an overview of the problem statement.
Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ravi Yadavar, as Siddesh said. Thank you, Siddesh, for the introduction. I'm the Chief Financial Officer for Zydus in US operations. So first two slides I'm going to talk about what Zydus is about, and one more slide on the challenges what we face to the current DR solution what we have, and the last slide before I hand it over to Siddesh, like what is the scope or what is the expectation from AWS to help us with the DR solution. With this, if you can see on the screen, like Zydus is one of the global pharmaceutical company founded in 1952, headquartered in Ahmedabad, Gujarat, like in India. It's India-based pharmaceutical company, having grown into more than 29,000 employees worldwide. And we also have a business operations in multiple countries, like India is the main, and the second largest is US. We also have a business in Europe, like many countries in Europe, Brazil and Mexico and many other like emerging markets. If you see the screen, like we have business offices in multiple locations in the world, and also we have 41 manufacturing plants. Out of 41 manufacturing plants, we have like a 16 US FDA approved facility, 9 formulation, 5 APIs, 1 biologics and 1 animal health, all catering to the US market. And also we have 8 R&D centers. If you look at this here, the group aspires to transform their lives through path-breaking discoveries. So we are more, not that we are a generic company in the US, but globally we are would like to go into like that discovery-based or NC-based company. That's the way we want to grow. We are, as I said, 29,000 employees. So I will talk about a little bit about the R&D initiatives, innovation, what you have taken on the next slide. So if you look at this slide, like we are talking about, we have almost more than 1,500 research scientists working on across 19 sites, developing on many like NCEs, biosimilars, vaccines, and many niche technologies, developing into many new products for across the globe. So we can see here we are more focusing on like NCEs, peptides, monoclonal antibodies, formulation development, and the nutraceuticals. And we recently like published or announced our positive results on like our pivotal phase 2B, phase 2 and 3 clinical trials for saraglitazar in adult patients in primary, like for PBC treatment for adult patients. And we expect to submit our with our FDA with the beginning of next year, and we expect the product to be launched in beginning of 2027. This will be our first NCE product coming out of our research facility, which is based in India. So we take pride in saying that we'll be the first company introducing NCE from our facility. So having said this, it's a very high level brief what Zydus is about. We'll talk about quickly like what is the critical challenges Zydus faced and which drove us to seek for a new disaster recovery solution. So we can focus, like we can divide this the challenges what we faced in three major like hurdles or challenges what we faced. The first one is like higher RPO and RTO rate. You may know like RPO, we had RPO of almost recovery point objective almost 24 hours and RTO of like more than 24 to 48 hours. So this high level of RPO RTO time result into very long recovery time of data in case of any hardware failures or any loss of data or accidental deletion or maybe any security events, which is not good for any pharma industry. The extended time of getting a shutdown results into like delay in production and regulatory compliance issues, and any loss of data is negatively looked at or viewed by regulatory authorities. And also any delay in manufacturing activities also result in delaying in delivering product to the needy patients. The second hurdle or challenge what we faced is the cost and operational overheads. As we all know, any investment or infrastructure investment, building up any facility is always we invest a lot of amount, and also we have to spend huge amount of money or amount in running the facility, operational cost and operational complexities. And lastly, we can say the security and skill staff, like on-site disaster recovery site is always prone to any cyber threats, cyber incidents, and also we have to hire people, develop skilled people to run the multiple sites and keep them like trained for like application, hardware center and other plant center locations. So these three major challenges which forced us or which drove us to go to AWS and help us with a better disaster recovery solution. So with this, we'll just quickly talk about what is that we wanted, what is the scope of the work, what was the expectation of Zydus from this team, AWS team, to help us. So if you look at this, the whole thing, what we are talking about, these applications or the servers, everything, this shows how complicated or complex the IT infrastructure is for any pharmaceutical company, like big company like ours, example. So we have 10 mission critical pharma applications running like multiple like applications, like you can see here. Sorry. So like we have this lab information system, the quality management system or document management system, warehouse execution systems and warehouse management system, manufacturing execution systems, all this e-log book, all this critical mission critical application running on 60 plus like virtual physical virtual servers running on multiple operating system like Windows and Linux, and also database like SQL database or Oracle database. But the volume of data is huge. Example, if you look at, we have almost 80 plus terabyte of data in central data center, always multiple 8 plant locations. These are all not just cold storage data, these are all actual live transactional data which requires very quick RPO time and RTO time of, say, RPO time of 15 minutes, RTO time of less than 3 hours. And also on top of this very quick RPO and RTO time, we have to also take care of this compliance, security and compliance issues, because for pharma company like us, regulatory compliance is not just a mandatory, it is mandated by regulatory bodies across the world, and every aspect of DR solution what we implement should be is easily validated, it is documented, and it is audited by the regulatory authorities. So we have to keep in mind, like, it is keeping, not only it is helping us to recover the data quickly, no loss of data, plus it is complying with all the GXP requirements. Having given all this scope, we approached the team and they helped us to develop a system for us. I'll hand it over to Siddesh to help us or show us what is the system they have developed for us, how they try to achieve our scope of objective. Thank you very much. Thank you, Siddesh.
Hey, thanks a lot, Ravi. Thank you for giving us a brief overview of not only the scale of operations at Zydus, but also the business requirements in terms of RPO and RTO. Well, let me just summarize what Ravi just mentioned in terms of business requirements. And building this solution at Zydus' scale was the toughest part, right? Not only they wanted a minimal RPO and RTO of 15 minutes RPO and less than 3 hours RTO, but also the solution has to be cost efficient, right? The scale at which they operate with 80 plus terabytes of data, multiple plant locations, and these servers of multiple applications. You saw LIMS, you saw different management systems. All of these are deployed across different infrastructures. There were physical servers, there were virtual servers. The servers also had multiple operating systems, different technology stacks, right? So the problem was of the scale and diversity of tech stack and the source application. Next is, because they have multiple plant locations, we had to establish secure and resilient networking between different plant locations and AWS regions. And of course, as Ravi mentioned, all of their software and applications is regulated by compliance, since they are a pharmaceutical company. So we had to make sure we design the entire solution, not only test and operate it, but also keep it compliant. Now let me talk about AWS Elastic Disaster Recovery service, right? But before I talk about the service, let's just take a step back and understand what exactly is RPO and RTO is very briefly. RPO is recovery point objective, basically your data loss tolerance. How much data your business can afford to lose in case there is a disaster. While RTO is recovery time objective, which is how much downtime your business can afford, or your application downtime tolerance. And of course, everybody wants RPO and RTO to be minimum, right? But that comes at a cost. So there is a calculated trade-off between how much RPO and RTO you want to achieve based on how much money you're willing to spend. Lower RPO, RTO, higher the cost, right? So, and vice versa. So Elastic Disaster Recovery gives you a balance of RPO in few seconds, RTO in few minutes, and without the extensive cost of running duplicate servers in two environments. Some key features of the service are, the first one is account isolation, right? The account or the environment where your data is copied is on AWS. That's your staging environment. That is completely isolated from your primary. Your primary could be on-prem, your primary could be a different AWS account or any other cloud. That is completely isolated from your staging environment. So if your primary is down or compromised or impacted, your data still remains safe in your staging environment. The second key feature is immutable snapshots. The data snapshots that DRS takes cannot be overwritten. This is a very strong defense in case there is a ransomware attack or there is a cyber attack. Your data is intact, your data is not corrupted. The third key feature is it helps you to have test drills and validation. This is not only a best practice, but also a compliance requirement that you need to periodically test the solution by conducting DR drills and validation tests to ensure your data integrity is intact and your DR solution actually works when there is a need for a disaster recovery. And the final point that I want to talk about is it helps you with point-in-time recovery, which means that you can go back to a particular snapshot, a particular time when your data was intact. That's before the attack or before the disaster happens. So collectively, this gives you a very strong control on your disaster recovery, that too at a low cost. Now, this AWS DRS is purpose-built solution for all your disaster recovery needs. The first key feature is it is flexible. Your data, your servers could be anywhere, on-prem, cloud, hybrid, physical, virtual, anywhere, right? DRS supports that. It supports wide range of operating system, multiple technology stacks. The entire service is reliable, which means that it is non-disruptive, right? You can perform your drills and your tests without impacting your production live use case. Without impacting your production and live environment, you can perform these drills and these testing. And all of this is highly automated, hence it's easy to use. If there is a disaster, the last thing you want to do is figure out which EC2 do I launch, or what are my login credentials, or how do I set up my environment, right? This is where creating launch templates and automating your entire process and testing it multiple times comes really at hand. And overall, it helps you to reduce your total cost of ownership of building a disaster recovery solution. And at AWS, security and resiliency is a shared responsibility, which means that AWS takes care of security and resiliency of the cloud, ensuring the data is encrypted in transit, at rest, physical security of all your server, of your data volumes, and it's customers' responsibility to make sure and ensure security and resiliency in the cloud. What that means is you have to ensure that correct monitoring, observability, and security protocols are in place. You set up and adopt correct backup and DR strategy as per your application needs, and you test them as well. That is customers' responsibility. And the underlying infrastructure is compliance ready, which gives you a very robust platform to build healthcare and applications which require different GxP compliance. So it helps you during your audits and compliance checks. Now, let me talk about the entire life cycle of disaster recovery service. The step one is setup. During setup stage, you set up a replication agent on your application servers. Again, your servers could be anywhere, any operating system. As long as you can install a replication agent, you are good to go. Once your replication agent is set up on your servers, it starts backing up your data to the staging environment. It does this by doing block level replication. Once all your data is copied in the staging environment, your setup is ready and you're good to test. In the testing phase, you simulate a disaster. In that, you create recovery instances or recovery EC2s through launch templates in your recovery environment, which is again completely separate from your primary environment. Once you test that your recovery workload is up and running, data integrity is intact, that's the time you get into the operating phase. At operate phase, the agent or the replication agent continuously does block level replication of your data. So, and this is how we ensure that you don't pay for a active setup, you just pay for the block level storage that you consume to copy your data. If there is an actual disaster, either natural or a cyber attack or a human error, you fail over. During failover, you using your staging data, you create your recovery instances, and your business starts operating instead of from primary through staging. And finally, fallback. Fallback is equally important. When your primary site is again up and running post disaster, all your data from your recovery environment is copied back to your primary environment, and your business is up and running from the primary site. Now let's take a look at how this works by taking a look at the technical architecture. On left, you will see the on-premises setup where all your source VM exists. Now you have to install a replication agent on these source VMs. All this data will be continuously copied with the help of replication servers in AWS on your staging subnet. So what a replication server does, it copies your data, it reads your disks, compresses it, encrypts it, and sends over TCP to your staging subnet. On staging subnet, all of this is copied into your EBS volumes. So the cost that you bear is only for replication servers, which are again not full-scale production servers which you would otherwise use to run your application workloads, but replication servers are low-cost servers, and your EBS volumes. Both of them are again comparatively much more cost efficient. And you also set up your EC2 launch templates. So launch template is where you predefine, in case there is a disaster, what EC2 instance do I launch, how much, what capacity, what configuration, what should be my network configuration, what should be my CIDR ranges, and all of that. Now let's take a look at what happens when there is a disaster. When there is a disaster, your primary site goes down. That's when the replication servers and check that all your data is actually copied to your EBS volumes. Once the data integrity is tested, then it quickly creates snapshots using your EBS volumes. And using the launch template that we have defined earlier and these snapshots, a new environment is created in your recovery subnet. At this time, all you have to do is point your network DNS to use the recovery subnet instead of your primary. Right now, you are operating in a failover mode where your application is entirely running from the recovery subnet running on AWS and not running from the disaster impacted primary source. All right, all of this is automated, so that if there is a disaster at 3 AM at night, you don't have to actually figure out what EC2 to launch, where to launch it, and all of that. All of that is already tested, already automated, and already defined when you do the setup stage for DRS. And DRS abstracts and helps you with building this end-to-end solution, which you can test as often as you want to. Now this is half of the DR cycle. Now what happens when your primary site is up and running? So when your primary site is up and running, you have to fall back from your recovery subnet to your original primary one. For that, you have failback client installed on your primary site, which copies the data back from your AWS environment to your source environment. Once all the data is in sync, you perform a failback, and your again disaster recovery cycle is complete. You start running your application back from your source environment, and then you can decommission the new instances which you started in your recovery subnet. Now Ashish will give us a walkthrough demo of how this entire cycle works, and then he'll also give us a brief overview of how we architected the network and talk to us about few learnings while doing this for Zydus. Ashish?
Thank you, Siddesh. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. So as we have now learned about Zydus, their challenges, and also how the AWS disaster recovery overall service architecture and the compliance, let me take you through a journey of Zydus solution. I mean, where Zydus started, it was not a single month or a year journey, multi-year journey. They wanted to first verify how the solution actually works for their key requirement, which is the minimal RPO. And for that, they wanted to understand how the application level RPO and RTO is met with the solution. So we created a disaster recovery service demo, more of a use case demo, where we showcased, and we will see in a minute, that we take an example of a Windows-based application server and a SQL Server database, pretty normal in the pharmaceutical application workloads. And then what we did was we created an abrupt failure scenario. We recovered that to hundreds of kilometers away in a different region, and measure the RPO, RTO and the data integrity. So this is how we will see in the solution demo. This demo required a failover scenario and also verifying the data integrity. It is approximately 20-25 minutes, and that's why we have pre-recorded this particular demo. So let's look into the demo. As you can see here, we have an application server and a database server in a source region Mumbai and replicating into the Singapore region, which is more than 4,000 kilometers or 2,500 miles apart. Let's verify the source environment. This is a CMS application. Let's see in the server also, it's 80 GB server and running on a .NET 5 application. Let's verify the database server, approximately 150 GB. And to measure the RPO, what we have done is we have created a date script which modifies the date table every second, and so that we can measure the RPO in the overall disaster scenario. And as you can see, it's modifying the script, and we will keep this running. Let's now also check the application level RPO and RTO measurement with creating a blog post. Now let's mimic the exact abrupt failure scenario. So both the server, we will skip the operating system shutdown. That means it may corrupt the data or system stability issues may occur. Generally that's where the disaster whenever occurs, this is the scenario. And immediately we'll get to the action. Both the servers simultaneously we will recover. And if you see, we have various snapshots, and but for this particular demo we will use the latest snapshot to measure the RPO. As you can see, the job has started. Let's also measure the exact time of the disaster from the CloudTrail audit API service. During the job scenario, the recovery job, one of the key step is the conversion process. So any source, as we have seen, any source machines can be recovered on AWS. So this particular conversion process, what it does is it makes changes into the bootloader, so that your source server type, it could be physical server, virtual server, Hyper-V, VMware or any virtualization, it can boot natively on AWS. That's the temporary conversion server we spin up. And as you can see, now the complete recovery is completed. And now it's time for verification of the data integrity. We'll check the application server first. As part of the recovery, if you know the Windows operating system, if it have done a abrupt failure, it will give you a shutdown event tracker, which because of the abrupt shutdown of the operating system. We'll start the IIS server, and meantime it boots up. Let's check the SQL database. Same shutdown tracker. Let's now check the date script, how much data we are able to recover from the abrupt failure. So we'll query date table. As you can see, like it's 11:45:48, and we'll summarize in the next slide how much RPO we are able to recover, or how much data we are able to recover. Let's also check the application level RPO and RTO with the data integrity with the blog. So we are able to also see the blog is also available, which was just created before the abrupt scenario. So what we observed, so AWS Disaster Recovery Service was successfully able to recover a Windows-based application and a SQL Server-based database application from an abrupt failure to a completely recovered state, which was there in the original state of application. This particular process we are able to do, 9 seconds of an RPO and less than 25 minutes of an RTO. So it was, the job took around 21 minutes, and then if we take the IIS boot up time, because that's where the application is accessible to the users. This was with Mumbai and Singapore region, which is like 4,000 kilometers or 2,500 miles apart. And distance plays a role in RPO, as you may know, right? This is great. If you see the Zydus scale, it has a data center and multiple plant locations across the country. And for that, what could be the scenario where they can achieve a less RPO? Any guesses? What could be the important aspect of architecting the solution? Network architecture, you may have guessed it right. So let's look into the network architecture. So this is the core foundation of Zydus disaster recovery solution, providing resilience, security and performance all together. If you start from the left, if you see the Zydus corporate data center, which was already connected with all the Zydus plant before we started this particular solution implementation. They already had an active passive different network provider connectivity between their data center and all the plants. All the traffic was going from the plant locations to the central data center locations. What we did was we just extended the existing resilient network architecture to AWS Direct Connect with a distinct AWS Direct Connect locations. With the same resilient pattern with active passive with two different network service provider. Here the key service is AWS Direct Connect, which is a secure and private connectivity service, connects between your on-premise and the cloud environment. One of the key thing or a design decision we had to make was, after establishing this particular connectivity, in the existing network pattern, all the disaster recovery traffic will also go to the data center and then will move to the cloud. That would create a bandwidth issues at the data center level. So what we did is we designed the network path such that only the DR replication traffic will move from the plant location directly to the AWS Direct Connect location, and the rest of the plant traffic will move on an existing path of the Zydus corporate park. So this was a very key decision. This actually optimized the bandwidth. Just imagine at the greater scale, when they add new plants, this would have created a exponential issues at the bandwidth. Let's move within the AWS cloud, where if you see the service called AWS Direct Connect Gateway. So Direct Connect Gateway is a service where you can connect to multiple AWS regions. Just imagine, with a single resilient connectivity, Zydus is now able to connect to any of the AWS regions. They don't have to mimic the same connectivity for every region, and that is enabled by the AWS Direct Connect Gateway. The next key service is the Transit Gateway, which is the central router and a network segmentation using hub and spoke topology. This is a very key service which enables you for isolating your critical workload into a separate AWS accounts and virtual private clouds. If you see here from the different network accounts and the disaster recovery production account, and as well as multiple VPCs having network account, having disaster recovery staging subnets, recovery subnets, all are isolated for a network segmentation, better security point of view. Let's deep dive into the overall Zydus complete disaster recovery solution. Starting from the left, we installed the AWS Disaster Recovery Agent on each source server, which started replicating encrypted and compressed block level data to the staging subnet. If you see here, we have already seen the direct connect and how it is enabled by the networking services. Moving to the recovery subnets, if you see here, the recovery subnet, there is not a single workload which is running 24/7, and that is only been available during disaster recovery drill or failover scenario. Zydus followed a 3-step of recovery in the recovery subnet. In the first step, they recovered a primary Active Directory. It's recovered and configured along with a third-party firewall instance with a pre-configured Amazon machine image, which provides additional network security to their existing disaster recovery environment. As you know, like your data has to be stable and available before your application can connect. And so in the second phase, all the database servers were recovered and configured. And at last, in the third stage of recovery, all the application servers are recovered and configured. At last, if you see, this is all the overall network architecture and the solution architecture. If you go into the solution now, let's say what was the implementation phase, right? You must have those questions. So Zydus followed a structured and phased approach in their implementation, starting with establishing a secure and resilient AWS cloud foundation. We have seen in the previous slides. Then after, we started application wise and a location wise replicating the data on cloud. This was in the first phase. In the second phase, the replication was completed of all the application servers and the database servers, and then it was extensively tested for configurations. This was done in the second phase, followed by a phase called as a hypercare for addressing any unplanned issues. Hypercare is a temporary phase where we provide an intensive support to address any unplanned issues like a replication lag or a replication backlog or let's say recovery configurations which you may encounter during your extensive testing. The third phase, and this is one of the very critical phase in terms of implementation, where we did a centralized monitoring and automated alerts for key matrices like replication lag, replication backlog, and network state monitoring, which is very important to make sure like the overall RPO is minimal. In the same phase, we have also done solution validation. So the solution was validated as per the GXP guidelines to ensure the data integrity and availability. Accordingly, Zydus teams have completed the GXP compliant solution validation documentation. And at the last phase, the solution we have done a complete disaster recovery drill with complete failover and failback testing. As you can see, within 6 months of a period, enterprise scale complex solution implementation as well as validation was completed by the Zydus team, and this is one of the outstanding efforts by Zydus IT and the business teams together. Here comes one of my favorite section. Not only, failed implementation, even the successful implementations like this also teaches us something valuable. And we would like to summarize in 3 key lessons. The first one with the cloud foundation, where Zydus prioritized the secure and resilient cloud foundation, as we have seen in the phased-wise approach. Why this is important? And if you ask this question, because it ensures that the DR environment stability is there throughout, ensuring the minimal RPO, which was their key requirement for implementing the DR solution. Not only that, that also enabled them to spin up new workload which are in isolated environments based on the network and the security based architecture. The second one is here where the things goes things went interesting. So while in the second phase, what we realized was there were 3 database servers which were having consistent replication lag issues. And this was very odd because there were more than 10 database servers, and they are very critical in terms of the transaction volumes. But only these 3 database servers in their peak times, and other database servers in their peak times also, they were not showing any replication lag issues. So Zydus teams, AWS support team, and as well as the partner teams, they actually worked together, deep dive into the issues in multiple level of diagnosings. What they figured out was there was an very extreme change rate was there on those 3 database servers. And just summarizing the resolution which happened in these stages was with configuring their firewall QoS policy, the corporate QoS firewall policy, then putting a dedicated replication servers, and as well as increasing the IOPS and the throughput of those database servers. Now you may have a question. This is a block level replication, and when you have just replicated the same disk over a replicated DR environment, how come IOPS and a storage throughput can be changed without changing the storage size? Because storage size is same because of the block level replication, right? So AWS has a GP3, which is the latest volumes, where you can increase the IOPS and the throughput without changing the storage size. And this was very key in achieving our solution also overall. Let's move to the last one, lesson learned, monitoring and alerting. So automated monitoring and alerting was set up, you already know, as part of the phase-wise implementation. What we observed was certain alerts were coming quite often, and due to the nature of the networking which is part of the remote sites, and that were also automatically getting resolved. And so overall governance point of view, we were getting a lot of alerts without any insights. So it's a little more of an alert fatigue, you can say. So what we did is our AWS partner Jayatma Technologies, who have actually helped with a semi-automated reporting, daily reporting, which made sure only for those set of alerts also we are not missing the key insights at the end of a day, and it helped actually in overall governance. Though this is part of a single sort of, or I would say 3 to 4 matrices. The key learnings from here is like monitoring and alerting, making sure when you are establishing a complete governance, you are not missing any insights out of that. Certain alerts, if they are not making sense, maybe removing it is a better choice. If they are making sense and having repeated alert, it's like a false positives, then you need to make sure you get a better insights with some daily reporting or maybe hourly reporting sort of implementation. Let's move to the like summarize this transformative disaster recovery solution implementation by Zydus. So as you can see, from 24 hours of an RPO to less than 15 minutes of an RPO, and 24 to 48 hours of RTO to less than 3 hours of an RTO, all this while not having any running any disaster recovery site up and running, or any infrastructure up and running, or without having any operating system or a database licensing, which means like no capital investment. Operationally also a very simplified solution which takes care of your physical servers and the virtual servers, all in while having completely managed and an isolated staging area, and you can do unlimited number of disaster recovery drills without impacting your actually primary environment, which is very critical for your regulatory compliances. So all this was achieved, summarizing the key benefits. I'm sure, I mean, all the benefits are equally important for Zydus. However, if I may ask Mr. Ravi to choose a single benefit which would like to highlight.
Yeah, Ashish, see, you are talking about 4 benefits like no capital investment, minimal RPO, RTO, simplified setup, and security and compliance. See, everything is important, right? But if it's a finance person, for me, no capital investment or minimum investment with minimal operational cost may be the key, but I will, instead of saying which is better, I will rate it. So I will rate maybe no capital investment is number 1, but for me, equally important is minimal RPO, minimal RTO as well, because that is more important from data point of view and compliance point of view.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your view. And let's now move into the last slide of ours. What's next? So typical cloud journey starts with a disaster recovery, and Zydus has adopted a very strategic and measured approach in their cloud journey, starting small with disaster recovery, proving the value, building the confidence, and then gradually increasing the cloud workload. So they are in advanced stage of implementing the cloud-based file servers, having secure and virtually infinite scale storage at their plant locations. They are also on the generative AI front. Zydus is investing in their technical teams by making them smarter and faster by using Amazon Q Developer. And they are also evaluating to move their non-critical primary workload on cloud. So with this, we come to an end of this session. Thank you very much for joining us, and take a moment please, and your feedback, valuable feedback will be highly appreciated. Please have that in the AWS Events app. Thank you again, and enjoy the rest of the reInvent. Thank you.